Mike, before we kick off our episode on the album for the year 1982, I have one question for you. It is not meant to be negative. It is not meant to be a pejorative.
Oh boy.
Is Lionel corny?
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Hell yeah, Lionel Richie is corny. He's when he even tries to be cool, he just comes off like a corny person trying to be cool. Like Lionel Richie is like sweater vest dad, you know, Danny Tanner corny.
Now, did his corniness help him in his ability to cross over?
100%. I mean, you look at everybody else who was popular around the same time that he was, and you know, some of these people, you look at Rick James, you look at a lot of these folks who are kind of threatening, at least in like a sexual sense, very like, Mr. Steal Your Girl way before Trey Songz came into the picture. Um, they had that, sort of like dangerous vibe to them. And Lionel was very, very safe. Um, he had worked with like Kenny Rogers and stuff before, so he definitely had like that middle America thing down pat.
I I come to that conclusion as well, and I kind of like that about him.
Me too.
It is really part of his allure in that an artist doesn't have to be like the coolest person, right? Like they can just be maybe a little uncomfortable at times. Maybe not the biggest social person. And we both you read his autobiography truly. I listened to the
The
audiobook.
audiobook.
And you could tell like there were moments in his young career or as he was growing up where he may have not been the most comfortable person around, and so this personality that developed, it probably was a way for him to kind of engage with others, to not be the center of attention necessarily, or maybe not be the person who people are just paying attention to and looking at. It's like, no, I'm going to be this off to the side a little bit and kind of be funny here and there, but I'm not going to be like the rock star kind of person that he eventually did become, which is kind of interesting to think
See,
about.
I kind of, yes. Also, your background is still football. No
Oh
worries.
yeah. Oh yeah. I'll have to change that.
um, like he talks about how, I mean, I'm not going to give any spoilers away in the book. How when he was younger, he's like a country guy. He's from Tuskegee, Alabama. Never really had a whole lot of like play with the ladies. Wasn't really like the typical rock star front person kind of musician. And then he, in the 70s, the Commodores were like this big funk band, and he had to kind of play an image a little bit, at least on stage, but
Hmm.
never seemed to be that kind of person behind the scenes. But I feel like in the 80s, he dumped like, I'm saying like a lot, I need to stop. He dumped the flashy suits and the big afro and just regular guide it. And I think that the regular guy part of who he was, and it wasn't playing a role, it was very authentic to him,
Hmm.
is a big part of the reason that he got over. He wasn't out there in like glitter suits shaking his butt and doing all that stuff. He was walking out there with like his sweater and his casual linen pants, and he was hosting award shows and being corny, and again, that was part of his appeal.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And you know what's interesting is I'm reading Jeff Pearlman's biography of Tupac Shakur,
Oh,
and we'll do a Tupac album at some point during this project here.
yeah, yeah.
One of the things that he did a lot of reporting on this, and one of the things that is kind of one of the themes of this book is how unauthentic Tupac Shakur was after doing Juice and seeing how the Bishop role gave him a lot of the popularity and the respect that he had been yearning for because he obviously had a pretty poor childhood, the attention that he yearned for. And so he turns into this character, which is not him. And he goes into uh, gangster rap, and he was not a gangster. He was like far from it. He's like an art kid and just a poor kid who's just trying to be fun and have friends, essentially. And so I find that to be so interesting because to kind of compare to Lionel, it's not until Lionel moves forward as a solo artist, which he's clearly not comfortable with, but at the same time knows that he has to do it, and his peers are telling him like, it's time, man, it's time, like you have to be, you have this opportunity, you cannot turn this away. And then he becomes the Lionel Richie that we know. And in 1982, which is the year that we are talking about, his self-titled debut comes out. Now, before we get to the album, 1982, you and I are like little kids,
We
like,
are very,
right?
very small human beings.
So it's the question is not even what was this album to you in this time period, because it wasn't anything to us, like we were too young. But what is music like to you in 1982? What is your relationship with music at that age?
Man, so I got very deeply into music at a very young age. I was 3 years old, 4 years old, and records and music were just a big part of who I was. And I feel like the one thing that sealed the deal for me as far as that went is Christmas 1981. I was 5 years old, and my grandparents bought me a record player. It was a Fisher Price record player, tan, tan and white. You plugged it into the wall. You could play records on it. It had like a little tinny speaker that was built into it. Super cool. I love that record player. And in that process, or in the process of getting that, I basically acquired all, not all, a lot of the records that uh, my elder relatives who had left the home had left behind, didn't really want anymore, could kind of do away with. So I had this collection like built in from the time I was 5 years old, and I knew who the popular musicians of the day were. I knew what the radio stations in New York were. I had all of this as a background. So I was listening to a lot of music from the 70s because that those are the records that my family left behind, and whatever was on the radio, or whoever the popular people were on daytime TV or Saturday morning TV at the time.
So you are way more advanced in music at this age than I am. I'm
Then
trying to
most
think.
6 year olds probably.
Right. I'm trying to even think of what I would have been listening to if I could even remember 1982 very well. Now,
Do
of
you not
course,
know,
Michael
like,
Jackson.
right? Do you know what were your parents listening to?
Yeah, I can't, I don't even remember because like there's like the cutting off period, like because I start kindergarten and I think we move right before I start kindergarten into the house that I grew up with. So that would have been 81. So I'm thinking of the setup. Yeah, I really don't remember. But I don't even remember really listening to the radio that early. I'm like really attentive to sports,
Hmm.
but not I wouldn't say that I was all that attentive to music until maybe like 2 or 3 years later where I can really remember, what I was listening to. I can remember when I got my little, boom box, and was just taping stuff off of the radio, like, "Oh
Yeah,
my
man.
gosh, I can tape this and I can listen to it again. I don't have to wait for." Oh, yeah, okay, here's a song that I can clearly remember from that time frame. "Eye of the Tiger"
Ah, yes.
because of Rocky 3.
But there's a tie in there, right? You were into sports. Rocky 3
Yes.
was a sports movie, and Eye of the Tiger was a theme of Rocky 3. It was all over the radio. So that makes perfect sense.
So the year in music, 1982. I just kind of jotted some things down to see if you would remember any of this stuff. Um, so the Grammys in February 24th, 1982. Obviously, it's the previous year's music, so it's all of
Hmm.
the music from 1981. Quincy Jones is the host, and he also wins a total of 5 awards. John Lennon and Yoko Ono's Double Fantasy, which was the final album released by Lennon while he was alive, wins Album of the Year.
Right.
Betty Davis Eyes wins both Record of the Year and Song of the Year, and Sheena Easton wins Best New Artist. I I can't even see, this is where I'm like 1981, 1980. I don't really know any of this stuff. So this is part of the reason why I wanted to do this project, is so I can go back and really catch up and learn about stuff, that I don't really remember from the time frame.
Hmm.
So March 18th, Teddy Pendergrass, car accident.
Yes.
And he's paralyzed from the chest down from
Yes.
this car accident,
Yeah.
March 18th, 1982. April 15th, Billy Joel seriously injured in a motorcycle accident in Long Island, and he spends over a month in the hospital undergoing physical therapy for his hand. I don't even remember him being injured.
I know that retroactively. I remember the Teddy car crash real time. I Teddy Pendergrass was a huge star. Um, Obviously, maybe not so obviously for people who might not know, but very much in the Black community, Teddy
Mhm.
Pendergrass is like as big as it gets, and uh, it was covered quite a bit in the Black press. I mean, I don't know if it's 6 years old. Well, I guess it was April, so I wasn't even six yet. I don't even know if I knew what paralyzed meant,
Yeah.
but I knew that it was serious.
Yeah, and then if you are 1997, The Nutty Professor, Eddie Murphy brings back Teddy Pendergrass because he's a Sherman Klump is a big fan of Teddy P. Uh, so if you don't know Teddy Pendergrass, maybe you may remember him from that movie from Sherman Klump doing his version of "Close the Door."
Please,
Um,
if you do not know who Teddy Pendergrass is, please go to your music streaming service of choice and go listen to some Teddy Pendergrass.
Go ahead, Teddy P.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, April 30th. Influential rock journalist Lester Bangs dies in his New York apartment of an accidental overdose of prescription drugs. And the reason why I know this information is because he is played by Philip Seymour Hoffman in the movie
Oh,
Almost Famous,
uh-huh.
and which is the Rolling Stone kind of biographical tale about being a young music journalist.
I have never
In
seen Almost Famous.
I think you would dig it.
Yeah, I gotta add that to my
It's
list.
very pop culture-y for that time frame. I think you'd really like it.
It makes sense.
October 1st, the very first compact disc appears in a music store in Japan. 1982, man. Wow. There you go. You got all of them.
Every compact disc that has ever been made since 1982.
And then November 30th, something near and dear to our heart, Michael Jackson releases his sixth studio album, Thriller, which would go on to be the greatest selling album of all time.
And
So that's a nice little,
nice little list. To be
yeah.
fair, people are probably like, why aren't they talking about Thriller? And that's because we're going to talk a lot about Michael Jackson
Yeah,
throughout this series. You're going to get sick of Michael Jackson. So we decided to give 1982 to somebody else.
yeah. Plus, how much is there left to talk about Thriller?
Yeah, I mean, that album has been bled dry.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's lean into this Lionel Richie project here. But before you actually talk about Lionel Richie, you have to talk about the Commodores, because
Yes,
as of the recording of the album, Lionel Richie is actually still a member of the Commodores.
correct.
He is a burgeoning artist who doesn't really fit inside the lines of what being a funk band is and what the Commodores want. He's not even like when this band was developed many years prior, because they'd been a band all the way going back to college.
Hmm.
He wasn't even like a big deal. Like he wasn't the biggest deal in the group.
He
Like
was
he
the sax
was,
player.
yeah, and so you think about it, you're like, man, how could Lionel Richie kind of be a background player? Well, that's what happens sometimes when you're a part of a band, but it's also what happens when maybe there's an artist who isn't really meant to be the most popular person or the lead singer, and they kind of branch out. He kind of becomes bigger than the Commodores at that time.
Yeah,
And there's so much interesting information about like him leaving and them, well, how they felt about it versus how he felt about it. You mentioned the Kenny Rogers song. He writes Lady for Kenny Rogers. In his book, he talks about having all of these songs that didn't really fit the Commodores, or he would try and get them recorded, and then they'd be like, we don't want those kind of songs. Even though when they did do stuff like that in the Commodores, like Three Times a Lady or Easy,
huge
they were big
hits.
songs,
Yeah,
but it was also maybe not what the Commodores as a group wanted to be their signature songs. So, Lionel has a bunch of these songs saved around, and he's obviously very interested in making music that fits that more adult contemporary or R&B genre. And so he creates this big hit for Kenny Rogers, and then he creates endless love for himself and Diana Ross for a Brooke Shields movie, which if you look at this poster of this Brooke Shields movie, it's like he's 17, she's 15. Like I'm like,
Is that
I
really
don't
in the poster?
that's on the poster.
Yikes!
Yeah, I'm
It,
not
it was a different time, y'all.
I'm not about to watch that movie, but I have heard "Endless Love" many times, and he tells the story in his book about how he actually got Diana to record the song. They
Mhm.
didn't actually record it together. They recorded her vocals, and then he put his vocals in after. So he's actually becoming a pretty big deal. And as always, when you're a part of a record company who wants hits, there is a pressure for him to go solo. Do more of Lady and Endless Love because we can sell that. We can get that stuff on the radio. We can
Right.
make that music successful.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, to go back to Endless Love for 10 seconds, I believe that Endless Love was the first movie that Tom Cruise was in.
No way.
Yeah, I believe that is his first movie. I might have to verify that via Wikipedia. He is in the movie. I'm not sure if it's his first or second appearance. But to roll back to the Commodore stuff, so all groups, all bands start out as a democracy. Your four friends, five friends, six friends, however
Yep.
many, you're like, we're going to split this up uh, each equally each way. Like, we're all poor, we're all struggling, we all want to make it, we all want to get the same level of fame. And you go in sort of blind to the fact that it's never going to be completely even. Nothing ever works out that way in a group setting. Someone always ends up getting more of the attention, more of the women, more of the money, whatever it is, than someone else. And the Commodore started out as a pretty funky soul band. Like, a lot of their early songs were very much in line with what else was coming out in the mid 70s.
Hmm.
Um, and Lionel had a particular ability to write certain songs that were, and I don't say this in a negative way, that were not particularly funky, but were very much straight down the middle of the road love songs, easy listening songs that had universal messages, whether it's Easy or Three Times Lady or Still. And those songs, because they were such like fastballs down the middle, became the biggest hits, and that created a imbalance.
Hmm.
And then, like you said, the Kenny Rogers song comes out, and it's a huge hit everywhere. Like, it's a big country hit, it's a big pop hit. Kenny Rogers is one of the biggest stars in the universe at this time. So Lionel Richie writes and produces the song. It becomes a big song, and all of a sudden, it's, you know, up until that point, it felt like Lionel was slowly becoming a bigger star than the rest of the band, but Lady put him out there like front and center as Lionel Richie, not just, a member of the Commodores. And I think once you cross that, it's really hard to go back into a group dynamic. So like you said, between that and Endless Love spent 9 weeks at number one, which at that time was ridiculous. It was my auntie's wedding song. It was,
Mhm.
just and I'm pretty sure for the next 10 years, a ton of people used that as a wedding song. It was just this big pop culture moment. Lionel got to sing it on the Oscars, all this other stuff. So it just created again, it creates this huge power imbalance where like Lionel's here, the rest of the Commodores are like here somewhere. And it's like, how do you go back to work and like split the money up and split the work division up six ways when you've got this dude who's like, oh, I can do bad all by myself? It's really hard. And it sounds from the book like Lionel really wanted to continue that band dynamic, but it doesn't feel like the ability to kind of fold himself back into that would have been sustainable.
It would have become Lionel Richie and the
Right,
Commodores and not just the Commodores.
right.
Now, from a racial component, um, obviously in Motown, Berry Gordy, the head of Motown, very, uh, having a black man be the guy who runs that label, very powerful.
Mhm,
And then as Lionel branches out, what branching out actually means is he's getting more pop fans.
mhm.
He's working with Kenny Rogers, who is not African American. He's
Right.
a country white dude. Like, being in that time frame, so we are past the 70s into the early 80s. I imagine for the Commodores, there was a little bit of a racial component of like the idea of crossing over, like Lionel was crossing over. Very few artists were able to do that as successfully, especially at that time. Lionel specifically is sort of non-political in this book, so
Mhm.
he doesn't bring any of that up. But I kind of do wonder, as I was reading it, I was wondering about that part of what crossing over meant to the music and to his band.
He does bring it up sort of peripherally in the book, and in the early '80s, particularly late '70s, well, throughout the entire '70s into the '80s, to explain it for younger people on the Billboard charts and at radio, in order to get, if you are a black artist, to get into the mass appeal pop charts, to get into the Billboard Hot 100, to get on top 40 radio, you had to first build up a base at black radio and then cross your song over. And to a large extent, that's why a lot of R&B records that are huge hits were not big pop hits, because there was a whole like political thing you had to go through that was, very unfair to black artists. And what Lionel did is he wrote songs that were not, I'm trying to be careful with my words here, that were not stereotypical R&B records. They could have been sung by anybody of any color and often fit multiple radio formats. Like Three Times a Lady is, I mean, it's not really sung or written in like an R&B fashion. Three Times a Lady is like an easy listening song or even like a country song.
Yeah.
Easy is a country song kind of. And it's not inauthentic like he's from Tuskegee, Alabama. Um, but these are songs that didn't necessarily fit the mode of what black radio was playing at the time. So Lionel caught a fair amount of shit through a lot of his career, into well into his solo career, for kind of being not black enough.
Mhm.
And I think that well, I'm sure that that caused some weird feelings in the Commodores as well. Like, what are you trying to bring to our music? You're diluting our music or making our music sound different or misrepresenting the group in some way or whatever. So again, just a whole bunch of different dynamics at play. And I mean, even to this day, look, uh, the powers that be, whether it's Spotify or whoever tries to keep artists almost separated by race, contingent to the type of music that they play, even though I think in realistically speaking, like the lines are more blurred than they've ever been between genres. But I think the reason that a lot of these genres are created in the first place is to separate people by race.
So the break, when Lionel does go solo, the idea is not to disband from the Commodores, it is
Right.
to stick around and stay with them, but he just becomes so big that it is unable to happen that way. I found an article, the LA Times, March 31st, 1985.
Uh huh.
William King from the Commodores, still a member of the Commodores, still hasn't forgiven Richie. The problem, King explained, isn't that Richie left, it's the way he left. The Commodores were in limbo throughout 1982, while their most valuable member worked on outside projects. And here's King's quote. He kept saying he'd be back. First, he was coming back after working with Kenny Rogers. Then he had to do Diana Ross. Then he had to do his own album. Meanwhile, we couldn't work. He wouldn't go on tour. And what promoter would book us without Richie? Would they book the Beatles without Paul McCartney? Richie was our McCartney. We weren't mad because he decided to leave. We were mad at the procrastination. He never called up and said, I'm going over there to do this, and I won't be there to work with the group. Not one of the days that he promised to be back did he show up. Finally, we had to go on without him. So I don't know how much of that is 3 years later he gets so giant and they're kind of left behind. So I don't know how much of that is bitter, how much of that is, maybe Lionel not being the most upfront with his feelings, which is really hard when you're in a group. And he obviously cared a lot about those dudes, but at the same time knew what was in front of him. But I just found that quote to be interesting because at this time in 1985, they do an album without Lionel. They actually have a hit, which when we do we're going to do another episode of our top 5 Commodore and Lionel Richie hits, and so we can talk about that then. But I just by the way that Lionel explained it in his book, I didn't really sense that there was that much frustration, but it sounds like there was a lot of frustration.
It would be really interesting to be a fly on the wall when those conversations took place in real time, because there's that that quote is definitely different from the way Lionel presented it in his book. And if the timeline's right, like the Commodores released an album at the end of 1981 after Endless Love,
Hmm.
and it was a hit, and they went on tour. And um, Lionel's solo album came out a year later. So in that timeline, where would there have been an opportunity for the band to make another album and tour? Um, it doesn't line up correctly with timing. But also, it's like, okay, so you're saying, William King, that you need this guy because he is your Paul McCartney, but the way Lionel tells it, it feels like the other members of the band were being resentful that he was a McCartney. So it's
Hmm.
like you can't have it both ways. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and maybe it's a little bit of revisionist history because you see how big he got, and then you go back and go, well, even if we wouldn't have been happy if it became Lionel Richie and the Commodores, we would have sold way more
Way more records
records
and made much
that
more
way
money.
and made so much more money, even having to split the money
Oh
that
yeah.
way. So yeah, I found that interesting. In 1985 LA Times, the author is Dennis Hunt. So if you want to go back and check that piece out. Okay, so let's talk about the album here.
Yeah.
The Richie co-produced the album with longtime Commodores producer James Anthony Carmichael. The album is an immediate success, peaking at number 3 on the Billboard 200 and spending 140 weeks on the bestsellers list in the US. It sold over 4 million copies in the US and was also a top 10 success in the UK. Now, we've talked about this before on a previous episode. How many versions of this album do you own?
One,
Okay,
just
okay,
this one here behind me.
okay.
I mean, I've bought it in every conceivable format. I've had a CD copy, I've had a tape. This is, I think, my second vinyl copy, but we're just on one copy.
How do you think it stands today, listening back as a debut solo album?
It sounds like 1982. Uh, it is. I don't think it's his strongest solo record. There are some good songs on it, and there are some songs that are pretty. I, I was going to use the word corny again, and I'm not sure that that's the word I want to use. Although the other word that I want to use is boring. Um,
You know what I found, and
what's
this
that?
is specifically, I think the song is it My Love?
Is that the country-ish kind of song?
It sounds almost exactly like Easy.
Yeah.
I was like, "Wow," like, he just really was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna remake this version, but by myself," and that's it really sounds very similar to it if you check it out. So, by the way, your Tom Cruise anecdote was right on the money, his very first
Hey.
movie. He did 2 movies in 1981, Endless Love and Taps.
Aha.
There you go. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the singles here. Truly is the first single, and it is the kind of song that maybe the Commodores didn't want to do,
Right.
and he leads off the album with it. What are your thoughts on Truly?
This is where I struggle between corny and boring. It it is a it's it if you were to put write a Lionel Richie song into Chat GPT,
Mhm.
truly is what it would come out with.
Right.
It's a very simple piano ballad. It's a very straightforward love song lyrically. It, you know, plugged right into what easy listening radio would have been like in 1982. And it is a well written, well performed song. It just doesn't hit me any kind of way.
Mhm.
Kind of like floats in the air above me, and I'm like, okay. But it's not one of my favorite Lionel Richie songs.
It, topped the Billboard Hot 100 for
Right.
2 weeks and the adult contemporary chart for 4 weeks. Do you know which song prevented it from reaching number 1 on the R&B chart?
Sexual Healing.
Sexual Healing.
Yes. An infinitely superior song.
And a polar opposite kind of song.
Yeah, Lionel was truly in love with you. Marvin wanted to get some.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when, was it? I think it was a Chris Rock song. He was saying, he's like, uh, Marvin was saying, "Let's get it on," and now the rappers today say, "Let's fuck." Before the Marvin was the Truly, and then it just kept going.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Okay, second single, "You Are," reached number 4 in the Hot 100. Lionel co-wrote this with Brenda Harvey Ritchie. I don't know. Did he say that he co-wrote it, or was she more of an inspiration? Because when he in the book, he talks about them getting a divorce, and he's going through the whole idea of like why she gets so much of his work credit, and he was saying like, she was an inspiration, but some of the things that she may get credit for being an inspiration were not like they were just me writing songs that I knew would work, not necessarily writing from my own autobiographical biographical experiences. But did she actually help him write this song?
I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. There's the possibility that she and Lionel were tossing ideas back and forth. There's a possibility that she may have thrown out an idea or a line or a lyric that ended up working its way in the song. Or it could have just been that he's like, "Oh, I'm so in love with my wife, and if she wasn't here, I don't know who would inspire these songs. So I'm going to give her writing credit." It, who knows? Brenda ain't talking.
Yeah. I really like the song, by the way.
"You Are" is a great song. I love that song.
Fantastic.
Yes.
We'll talk about songs on this album and what playlists you may have them on in another section of this show. But listening to that song again, it just takes you to a place, man. Like I'm just like,
It's super smooth. It is very catchy.
hmm
I mean, it's definitely up there in terms of like Lionel Richie songs that I 100% love. Every time I was singing the song to myself earlier today, I think because I knew we were going to record this episode and I had Lionel
hmm
stuck in my head.
yep.
But still, great song.
And it's just a happy song too.
Yeah,
Just puts you in like a really good mood, which is, um, something that's really good about connecting with music. All right, the third single was the aforementioned "My Love" that I said sounds very much like
like
Easy.
easy.
It's the third single. It went to number 5 on the Hot 100, and I guess Kenny Rogers, sings on this song is it in the backgrounds?
Yeah, he's a background vocalist. I had, for whatever reason, never looked at the liner notes until fairly recently, and I always would hear that song and be like, "It really does sound like Kenny Rogers is singing somewhere in that." And I finally looked at the liner notes and confirmed it. But yes, Kenny Rogers sings background on "My Love."
That's cool, like a
Yeah,
little scratch your back since you scratch my back.
I mean Lionel's scratch was a lot bigger than Kenny's scratch, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, it's still good kind of
Well,
quid pro quo.
Kenny's, scratching of the back, as explained in Lionel's book, is letting he and Brenda stay at the,
Thing,
guest house.
yeah.
Yeah, and they never wanted to move. They really loved that guest
I'm
house.
wondering, was he paying Kenny rent?
He said that Kenny didn't want rent originally, but then he kinda made Kenny, set a price for them, and I think even back then, he said it was like 3 grand or something, and he's like which was a lot back then,
3 grand is a
but
lot now.
but in that area and for the space and everything, he was like, "We could afford it," and it was totally fine, so, yeah, 100%.
Get somebody to hook you up with real estate, man.
Okay, so, those are the hit singles. Are there any other songs on this album that you find yourself really enjoying?
Actually, yes. There's one song called "Serves You Right," which is probably like the most up tempo, like funky sound on the album.
Greg
Spunk,
Gaines.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and Greg Gaines, who did a lot of work with Mike, and it feels like Michael and Lionel kind of traveled along this parallel path through a lot of their careers. Even to the point where like this album and Thriller came out pretty much right next to each other,
Mhm.
but they used a lot of the same musicians, that kind of thing. And it does. You could picture Service You Right has a little bit of like a PYT Baby Be Mine
Mhm.
kind of feel
Mhm.
to it. I love that song and Wandering Stranger, which I think is no, it's not the last song on the album, but is also like a very like mysterious sounding ballad, has like some sound effects happening, maybe a little bit more adventurous than Truly or My Love. And I used to play it a lot because one of the first records I bought as a kid was the 45 for All Night Long, and Wandering Stranger was the B-side.
Mm.
So yeah, there are a couple of songs on the album that I still gravitate to that were not the singles.
And people are probably wondering, like, where does All Night Long come in? And it's literally the next album that
Yeah,
comes out the
first
next
single off
year.
the next album. Yeah,
Can't slow down.
yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna ask you some question before we get to that. There is a remaster of this album where you get Endless Love, but it's just Lionel. The Diana
Really?
part is not there. And then there's an instrumental to "You Are," which you get Lionel singing the chorus, but that's it. And like it's just other than that, it's instrumental. So it's kind of an interesting like bonus track
Huh.
just to get the Lionel part on "Endless Love" and then that instrumental of
So
"You Are."
it's funny. There's a Diana album with Endless Love on it, and it's just her. So
That's funny. Yeah, that is
I don't
funny.
know. Yeah.
All right, so I have some questions for you here.
All right.
I mean, I will answer and say that "You Are" is my favorite song on this album. What is it? The favorite song on
It is, yes, by
your
far.
favorite as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so that we get that out of the way. You already mentioned that you own this album on vinyl, as people watching on video can see behind you. All right, now let's get to the playlist question.
All right.
You're making a playlist. What's the song, and what kind of playlist?
So You Are is on a couple of my playlists. I have kind of like a smooth, just like a smooth mellow playlist that's on. I have a yacht rock playlist that's on. Um, in New York, and I think that it might actually still exist. I haven't done my research. There was a radio station called WLTW Light FM, and as I was growing up into my 20s, actually, I would listen to Light FM to go to sleep at night. But my grandmother would play Light FM in the house, and through into the 90s, you would hear "You Are" on on that radio station. It was, very much an evergreen song. So I've got a Light FM playlist that's on. "You Are" fits in a few different boxes, but anything smooth or mellow, it immediately goes on to.
So for me, it's also "You Are," and we do this thing right before the school year starts again, where we kind of created this thing with my kids and my ex-wife and Crystal and myself and my stepkids, where we kind of have like a last summer's about to be over kind of party.
Oh,
And we jokingly decided, at least the first time, we jokingly were like, why don't we just make some kebabs and we'll call it the kebabacue? And so
that is corny.
it is now, I think it's like 3 or 4 years we've done this party. So now the kids like invite their friends and we invite some of our friends and we just have this like barbecue essentially, but it's not actually it's not like we're not grilling. We're just, we just serve food. And so I make a playlist every year. That summery kind of like laid back sound of "You Are" will make next year's kebabecue playlist for
Okay, 'cause
sure.
I was about to ask, you have kids who are, um, like early 20s ish,
Mid
mid
20s.
20s ish. I, phew. And then you also have stepkids who are maybe a decade and a half younger.
Decade younger for the twins who are sophomores in sophomores in high school.
Okay.
But my oldest is actually 16 years older than my youngest stepchild.
Oh wow. So do they have a concept of who Lionel Richie is?
I think my oldest kids would know him more from American Idol than anything else. That would
Got
be my guess. I haven't talked it's not like we've talked about Lionel. Um, a song that we will talk about a little bit when we do our next episode of the top 5 when we talk about Lionel is, uh, I Call It Love. I'm sure my kids know that song because I would have played it in the car when they were younger.
mm.
So that might be it. They may know All Night. I mean, All Night Long is kind of hard to not
Yeah, you
know.
can't miss that song.
And then maybe We Are the World as well. They may know
Dude.
it a little bit.
So I was at work a few days ago, and a coworker and I were standing in front of like the snack tray, just talking, whatever. We have, when you walk into our office, you walk through the door and there's a big screen that is usually playing a video. The video that was on was "We Are the World." My coworker, we're talking, and he like pokes me. He's like, "Yo, Mike." I was like, "What's that?" And I swear to you, Garrett, I looked at him for like 10 seconds and I was stuck on stupid. Did not know what to say. I was like, "You don't know We Are the World?" I was like, "Dude, how old are you?" He's like, "I'm 33." I was like, "How do you, as a 33-year-old, not know We Are the World?" And he was like, it came out 7 years before I was born." And then I did the math in my head and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. It just
Yeah.
dropped it. But someone at this point, someone in their almost mid 30s wouldn't have been born at the time We Are the World came out.
So the documentary came out in 2025
Right.
called The Greatest Night in Pop. And it tells the story of Lionel and Michael and Quincy putting together the stems of what became We Are the World. Stevie's supposed to be involved, but Stevie's not returning phone calls or something. There's some reason why Stevie
Stevie's just
comes in late
always
in
late.
the game. Yeah. And so, it really they're trying to create this anthem. They're very much inspired by what was the song that had come out, the Christmas song that
Yeah,
had
Do
come
They Know
out.
It's Christmas by
Right.
Band-Aid? Yeah.
And so they were very much inspired by that. Um, and they wanted to do something to create an opportunity to give to to Africa the what was the chair the
Well, it's the famine relief for Ethiopia primarily.
yeah, there was a I don't know if it was a charity, but there was a thing that they called it that I can't remember right now. But anyway, so they create this song and it's Michael and Lionel and Quincy, and then all of a sudden the word gets out, and so they're kind of maybe we'll add this person in, and then they add, and then one of the people says yes, and then like Bruce Springsteen says yes, and all of a sudden like all these other people get interested, and so now it's not just this project that is Michael, Lionel, and Quincy. It's like this giant project, and so how do you get everybody to record a song together? Well, you do it at the American Music Awards where almost everybody's going to be there anyway.
Right.
So they created this documentary about the creation of the song. Came out on Netflix. It's still on Netflix. You could check it out. And it was perfect for me to go back and because I'd watched it when it came out, but I wanted to go back and watch it after reading Lionel's book. And it's just so fun. Now, I think when you and I were growing up, the We Are the World video was on a lot, so we
Mhm.
got to see, and then there was a making of We Are the World, which we probably saw 10
Mhm.
times or more. But seeing this in the documentary form as it was, there's new footage in there. There's Al Jarreau. They gotta keep the wine away from Al Jarreau because he's having too much fun and he's acting a little bit of a fool sometimes. And, the Waylon Jennings walks off the stage because he doesn't wanna sing in Swahili, which they don't even do it
They never use
anyways,
it. Yeah.
and Waylon's like, "Nope, this country boy, he's not gonna do that," so he leaves, and then just to see, like I was telling Crystal, I was like, "Oh, look, Dan Aykroyd," and she's like, "Dan Aykroyd? Why would he be there?"
Blues
I
Brothers,
was like,
baby.
"Yeah, Blues Brothers," and also Ghostbusters had just come out, so he's, like, really hot at this point, and so, just it's like a who's who, and then poor Sheila E., she realizes during the session that, "Oh, I'm here because they think Prince is gonna come," and she's like, "Damn it." Like, you could tell she's still bothered by that a little bit even today. But Huey Lewis gets the Prince part that they had
Right.
saved for Prince, hoping that he was going to be there. And Huey's like nervous. Cyndi Lauper's got so much background noise on her audio and they can't figure out why. And then they realize it's because of all her earrings and
All the
bracelets,
jewelry.
jewelry.
Yeah.
So it's just like,
It's fun.
it is something that could not happen today. You
They
like
they did We Are the World for Haiti, and I want to say that was like 2010, 2015. Bieber's on it. So it's gotta be
Kanye is
fairly
on it.
recent. Is he
Lil
really?
Wayne is on it.
Lord have mercy.
But even then, though, even when they did that, it's still the idea of like, who are the biggest artists today? Like, could you get 40 artists like that in one room and say all of these people are famous? You couldn't. Like,
Probably
it
not.
doesn't work like that anymore.
I
You
mean,
could get 10 maybe, and everyone would know who those 10 are. But then there'll be 30 others, and you'd have half of the people going like, "Who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Who's that?" And on this video, there are, when I was a kid, there's probably like 10 people who I was like, I'm not really sure who that is, but they're just famous for some reason.
right.
but today you couldn't.
Yeah,
Everything
you
is so
probably couldn't.
niche today.
Yeah, there's no monoculture anymore. Like, I'm thinking back to watching We Are the World for the first time, and I knew who most of those people. I Only person that I can think off the top who I didn't know was Bob Dylan.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I'm pretty sure I knew every single, and I might not have known Steve Perry's name. I knew he was the guy from Journey.
Yeah.
I would have known Steve Perry. Uh,
Well, because
yeah,
there's a powerhouse moment where you go Steve Perry and Daryl Hall back to back,
yeah.
and you're like, "Oh my gosh, those guys can sing just as good as, Stevie and MJ and Lionel can."
Two of the best white singers of all time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anyways, it was a little bit of an aside, but I wanted to mention "We Are the World" because, you know, 82 to then 85 is not that long of a time.
Nah.
Like, Lionel goes from going solo to becoming one of the biggest stars, one of the biggest entertainers going in a short amount of time. It's absolutely incredible, and
Yeah.
he is seen as that guy. He comes off so the story of this recording is Lionel is hosting the American
He
Music
hosted the
Awards.
American Music Awards, right?
Lionel is winning the American Music Awards, and he is, he's screaming out a word, outrageous,
Outrageous.
over and over and over, and he kinda makes fun of it in the book, but it's something that you and I have had jokes about for the last 20 years,
Oh yeah.
and, just the idea of him and this goes back to the corniness of Lionel, right?
Right.
He he wins an award, and he goes, "Outrageous!"
Outrageous.
And then he says it, like, 2 more times, like, in, like, this interesting, way. It's just hilarious if you watch it back, but,
Yes.
so, like, but that just shows you how giant of a star he is in just 2.5 short years,
Yeah.
so alright, so let's go back to these questions. Here's a what if.
Oh.
Okay, Kenny Rogers comes over and he's like, "Hey, man, I'm looking for a song." And Lionel knows that he's got the idea for Lady in his back pocket, and he's like, "You know what? I could give this to Kenny, and Kenny will probably sing the hell out of this song. I'm keeping this one for me." And instead, Lady becomes the first single on Lionel's debut album.
Wow.
Does anything change? Does it become a bigger song with Lionel, or is it a bigger song with Kenny?
I think part of what set Lionel up for the level of success that he had, was that Kenny Rogers opportunity. Um, Sorry, thought I turned my notifications off. Anyway, um, so probably not. It would have been a big hit no matter what. It's just such a timeless song, and again, one of those like wedding songs. But I feel like there's like a progression. There's like Commodores, then there's Kenny, then there's Endless Love, and that kind of like created the runway
Yeah.
for him to really take off in like a major fashion. Lionel actually did eventually in the 90s record a version of Lady, which is very good. But
Did he record it with Kenny?
no, actually I think he recorded it in the 90s by himself, and then when he had that Tuskegee album out,
Right.
which is him remaking all of his songs in a country fashion, then he re-recorded it as a duet with Kenny. I'm on Wikipedia trying to verify that right now.
I'm pretty
Uh,
sure that
yes,
that's the case.
yes, he re-recorded it with Kenny Rogers. So it's been on multiple Lionel Richie albums.
Have you seen Lionel in concert?
I've not, sadly, and I that makes me very sad. I don't know if I would want to see him now. I mean, Lionel's in his late 70s. Um,
That
I
dude
would
looks
go.
good for his late 70s,
Mhm,
man.
Lionel has some work done. Uh,
Okay.
Lionel went to Smokey's plastic surgeon. Um, I mean, if I was to find a decent ticket, if he was going to tour again, and I was to find a decent ticket price, I would go for nostalgia's sake.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would. I don't know if it would be a great show, but just to catch that vibe,
Well,
he
I
did a
mean,
tour.
he's not selling out arenas at this
Yeah,
point. It would be a much smaller thing.
it wouldn't be that much smaller.
You don't think so?
Nah, man, Lionel could sell out the Garden easy, um, because now it's like he's got it would be uh, people his age, it'd be people
Mhm.
our age, and then all of these young people who are know him from American Idol now, so he's just got like this multi generational fan base. He did a tour a couple years ago with Mariah, and I wish I'd have gone to that because it would have crossed them both off
Interesting.
my list.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I regret not seeing that show.
All right. I've come up with something called the no skips rating.
Yes.
The idea behind the no skips rating is you start the album from front to back, and when you have the feeling of like, "Oh, I'm not really into this song," you skip it. You're like, I don't need to hear this song. It's not my favorite or whatever." So, there's only like 9 songs on this album.
Hmm.
So, if you skip a handful of them, the skips rating is probably gonna be a little low, but skips rating goes 1 through 10. 10 is like no skips at all, and we're not gonna do an album on this project that's gonna be a low skip rating, obviously, but where do you fit Truly with in your skips rating? No skips rating.
The album. So 10 is no skips.
Yes. Sorry, not
Okay.
Truly, the self-titled album, I'm
Right.
sorry.
Um, I would put it about a 6.
Yeah, I was thinking 7
Yeah.
myself
Yeah.
because when I so what I here was kind of like my absorption of the material is I listened to the album first, then I went into the autobiography. I got the thing on audiobook, and then I went into the Commodores, then I went into his solo stuff, and then I came back to the debut album. And I think after listening to everything, coming back to the debut album, I liked it a lot better than I did when I had just kind of started the thing. Because I've heard
Mm.
most of this stuff before. I don't know if I'd ever heard it kind of all the way through just in a, in the album before like that. But I think once I sort of realized his story and things like the just having the comprehensiveness and the understanding of his story, I like the album a lot better. So yeah, I would say 6 or 7 is kind of right on the money.
Yeah.
Um,
And
the
I talk crap about Truly, but Truly is one of those songs where I never need to want to listen to it again, but I know every single word to that song.
right, right,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. Okay, so I wanted to also do something, and I didn't tell you about this
Oh boy.
called the Grammys redo.
Ooh, let's go.
So 1983 Grammys. He wins pop male vocalist for Truly. But I wanted to go through all of the other R&B and male performances awards and just see if he would fit anywhere in these awards if you could kind of do them over again.
Mm,
And you are a Grammys aficionado from historical. I don't know how closely you follow the Grammys these days.
mm.
Um, it might be fun for us to do when the Grammys comes along again to kind of do a solo episode to talk about them. But I know historically you have great knowledge of these awards. So, best rhythm and blues vocal performance male.
Uh-huh.
The nominees were Marvin Gaye, "Sexual Healing," Stevie Wonder, "Do I Do," Luther Vandross, "Forever, for Always, for Love," Ray Parker Jr., "The Other Woman," George Benson, "Turn Your Love Around." Lionel was not nominated in this award. The winner was Marvin Gaye, "Sexual Healing." How does that one hold up for you?
It was the right choice.
Yeah,
I'm just kind of going through the list in my head again. All of those songs are perfectly good songs, perfectly fine songs. Sexual Healing is an all timer. Like, and Marvin Gaye made amazing records throughout his career, but Sexual Healing is one of those songs that just will live forever. It is, one of one.
so best rhythm and blues song goes to "Turn Your Love Around." Stevie gets nominated twice for "Do I Do" and "That Girl." "Let It Whip" is also nominated, as is
Yeah.
"Sexual Healing." "It's Gonna Take a Miracle" is the other song that's nominated, but "Turn Your Love Around" is what wins. How does that hold up?
Not well. I would have given it to Sexual Healing, and my runner up would have been one of the Stevie songs.
Mhm.
That Girl, I think, is a much better record than Do I Do is. Um, but yes, I mean, Sexual Healing was kind of risque at the time, so I can see why they wouldn't have given that song an award. Grammy voters back then were super, super conservative. Um, and Turn Your Love Around is a fine song. Again, Sexual Healing is just such a great record. It just blows all the competition away, even when the competition's good.
Album of the year, Toto 4, Billy Joel, The Nylon Curtain, Donald Fagen, The Night Fly. I don't know that one.
Okay, I do.
John Cougar, American Fool, Paul McCartney, Tug of War lyrics. So there's no R&B album that is nominated for album of the year, and the winner is Toto 4. How does that hold up?
Um, I am familiar with all five of those albums. I've owned them at various points in my life, maybe except for the Billy Joel album. So Donald Fagen, for those who don't know, is the vocalist of Steely Dan. Um, and This was his first solo record. Uh, I would say of those five albums, it is the most R&B oriented, and did get some black radio airplay back in the day, and is the only one of those five albums that I still own. So by default, and
There
not
you
even
go.
by default, that Donald Fagen album is actually really good. So I would have probably given it to that.
All right, record of the year. Toto for Rosanna, Joe Jackson for Stepping Out, McCartney and Stevie Wonder for Ebony and Ivory, uh, Willie Nelson, Always on My Mind, and is it Vangelis?
I think
Chariots
it's
of Fire?
Vangelis, but I've always thought it was
Vangelis.
Vangelis too. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if it's if what the pronunciation of the G is.
And then Toto wins for Rosanna.
Yeah, man. Toto's fine. I don't know if I was voting if I would have given them any of those awards. Ebony and Ivory has a soft spot in my heart. As corny is going to be the operative word of this particular episode. As corny as Ebony and Ivory is, it's also the first 45 record that I ever bought. So that song will always hold a special place in my heart. But that said, I would probably have given the award to Joe Jackson. Stepping Out is another fantastic record, and one that I still listen to quite a bit now. So I mean, I have a long history of disagreeing with people who vote for Grammy awards.
All right. This is not an award here, but I want to get your thoughts. Do you go Ebony and Ivory, Say,
Ooh.
The Girl Is Mine, or That's What Friends Are For?
Okay. So in order from song I like least to song I like most, uh, that's what friends are for. And I will say that earlier this year I saw Gladys and Patty in concert together,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, and Gladys sang the song by herself, but oh wait, Patty's not even on that record. Sorry. Anyway, I saw Gladys Knight and Patti LaBelle and Shaka Khan and Stephanie Mills. They were great. Gladys sang "That's What Friends Are For," and then as I was standing online at the merch table, the overhead PA was playing "That's What Friends Are For," and I started tearing up, and I'm like, "What's going on? I hate this fucking song." Um, so sometimes a song just has to hit you a certain way. But
Yeah.
with that said, that's what Friends Are For is probably the song I like least out of that bunch. Then The Girl Is Mine. Um, and then I would say and Ebony and Ivory are kind of neck and neck. Say is probably a better song, but again, Ebony and Ivory, I just have that that soft spot
Mhm.
for it. So I don't know. It would
All right.
be yeah, 1-2.
Final Grammy redo here. Song of the year. Always on My Mind, Rosanna, IGY, What a Beautiful World, Eye of the Tiger. My goodness. Ebony and Ivory, and the winner was Always on My Mind.
I mean, Eye of the Tiger. I mean, it's a songwriting award, um, but Eye of the Tiger is just a perfectly written song. It, you know, encapsulates the feeling of the film that it was written for,
Mhm.
but it's not even. You could enjoy Eye of the Tiger and never have seen a Rocky movie before in your entire natural life. It's just like it's one of those. Um, when I used to run regularly, Eye of the Tiger was
Oh,
one of
yeah.
my running songs. There is no "Lose Yourself" by Eminem if there isn't an Eye of the Tiger.
Right.
Like it's just one of those. It's perfect for what it is. So
Alright, so does Lionel's self self-titled debut album fit on any of those spaces, or was he rightfully left out of all of those spaces?
so technically, I think the reason he was left out, at least in the album categories, is because the album came out after the deadline. Like the way the Grammys work is for the year that they're voting for, it starts October 1st of the roughly October 1st of the previous year and then ends like September 30th. So if this is the 1982 awards, then it's everything that came out from October 1st, 1981 to September 30th, 1982. And I think Truly came out before that, but the album came out after that, which
Hmm.
is why Lionel ended up winning the one award he was nominated for Truly. But yeah, it could have been nominated for Record of the Year or Song of the Year. Um, Truly is not rightfully not in the R&B category because it is not an R&B song. So putting him in pop was the right thing to do. Um, but yeah, I mean, there are certainly songs in the record and song of the year categories that truly is as good as. Uh,
Alright, so I think we're done here with this episode. 1982, so we got another one in.
we
And,
did,
we just to let people know, like, we have an idea of what the majority of the albums are that we wanna talk about. We haven't slotted everything in, and I'm not even sure the order in which we are going to post these, but we're not gonna go in order. We're just gonna kinda throw them around, and we'll
yeah.
figure out where. So, the previous one that I can say this because I know Lionel is gonna be number 2, but the previous one was the New Edition,
Yeah.
Heartbreak. We didn't do a no skips for New Edition. What would you have for no skips rating for New Edition's Heartbreak?
Heartbreak is like an 8.5 or a
I
9.
was gonna say 9.
Yeah. Competition
It
is the only song on that
That's the
album that I
one.
don't play.
That's the one.
Yeah.
There we go. So we're on the same page with that one.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back. And like I said, we're gonna have these side episodes. We're gonna do our top 5 for Lionel and top 5 for the Commodores. So that'll probably be the next thing. For this one though.
Yeah.
For Mike, I'm Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace
Peace, y'all.
out.